participants from all over the world to our presentation about green human resources management practices. First of all, we would like to thank the SSHRA and Eurasia Research for the invitation and for the opportunity to present our research as a keynote speech at this great conference. It is a great honor and distinction for us. We are interdepartmental research team from the Faculty of Management, University of Łódź, Poland. Professor Bozena Matusiak represents the Department of Computer Science. Dr. Izabela Rozanska-Binczyk represents the Department of Human Resources Management, and I am from the Department of Entrepreneurship and Industrial Policy. We divided our presentation into 7 parts. In the first part, Bozena will present importance of sustainable development and green practices for business, especially in the transition economies. Then Izabela will define and present the scope of green human resources management practices. In the third part, I will underline the relationship between GHRM practices and environmental performance. Then I will present research methodology and results, summary and literature for our presentation. The first part will be presented by Bozena Matusiak.
Hello, everyone. The idea of sustainable development formally crystallized from 1987 in Brundtland Report on the conference Our Common Future. Together with the Agenda 21 and with Agenda 2030, we have the world have created the goal which we should achieve as a planet, as a society, as a people. These pictures have shown you which is the situation of the world. Sustainable development, do we really need it? Yes. My answer is, of course, yes, we need it because of the situation like this. We have pollution, we have people with many troubles according to dust and carbon dioxide pollution. We have main goals for sustainable development, and the mission for the business are as follows. We have to increase the efficiency of our use of resources. We have to minimize of negative environmental impact, including especially reduction of carbon dioxide emission and dust emission. We have to rationalize cost and process improvement in transition economy. We have to use new technologies to support development. And of course, we have to protect social development and bridge social gaps between societies. And the micro level, Polish companies implement the idea of sustainable development using various tools and taking dedicated action. They, for example, integrate the objective of sustainable development in the company strategies. They take more formalized action like preparation of ecological policy, implementation of standards like ISO standards or environmental declaration. Also, we, as a Polish companies, they train and promote knowledge about sustainable development and the goals and the needs. They undertake also projects and activities within the framework of responsible business like CSR reporting and others. So there is not so bad in the Polish companies. But from the last years, we can observe that we have some kind of new actions like green practices. And the green practices are primarily focused on environmental management and sustainability issues and cover different areas of business management, like, for example, green management, product life cycle and green supply chains. And between others, also we have green human resource management practices.
Hello everyone. Green human resource management practices developed and implemented to promote specific behaviors among employees which increase the environmental performance of the entire company. So, green human resource management practices divided into 5 categories. Green planning, taking account of related tasks with environmental protection in job descriptions. Green recruitment, preferring in the recruitment and selection process candidates with experience in the implementation of environmental projects, emphasizing the environmental image of the company. Green development, trainings to educate and develop employees' environmental skills. Green motivating, rewarding employees for their environmental activities. And green performance management, including environmental criteria in the periodic evaluation of employees.
As we mentioned before, the theoretical assumptions underline that the key output of GHRM practices should be improvement of environmental performance of enterprises. This performance can be defined as effectiveness of companies' various environmental activities. And on the basis of the literature, we can divide these practices in this performance into specific dimensions. First, green processes, then green products and services, and green management. What is also important, we can divide environmental performance into specific levels. First, individual level, which is related to environmental achievements of specific employees or managers. Then a team level related to environmental outputs of groups or teams within the organization. 3, company or organization level, which represent environmental performance of the whole company. And the last, network level related to environmental benefits achieved through inter-organizational or network cooperation. After review the theoretical foundations of GHRM practices, we were very interested about how they are implemented in business practice in Poland as the transition economy. For this purpose, we conducted survey research on the sample of 120 managers and employees from companies located in our province. Respondents were working students of part-time and postgraduate studies in the University of Łódź and the Technical University of Łódź, 2 universities from our region. This was a good solution because just before taking part in the study, we could give them a brief overview of what Green Human Resources Management practices are. Respondents were mainly young people employed as specialists or regular employees in marketing, IT, or, for example, logistic units. They represent mainly medium or large enterprises operating in national or national markets. And most of represented enterprises were owned by Polish capital, but in the sample there were also enterprises owned by foreign capital. In the first part of the study, we asked the respondents if they perceive the application of GHRM practices in their enterprises in 5 following stages of human resources management: planning, recruitment, development, motivating, and performance management. We found that 77% of respondents perceive the implementation of at least one GHRM practice in the company. The implementation of these practices varied from one stage to another. Most of the practices were perceived at the stage of planning and development of the staff, while the least they were implemented at the stage of motivating and managing staff performance. We also asked the respondents how long the particular GHRM practices have been used in the company. We found that these practices at the planning stage have been in use for about 1 year, at the recruitment and development stages for about 8 months, and at the motivating and performance management stages for about 4 or 5 months. What is also interesting, we found that GHRM practices began to be implemented much earlier and in a greater extent in the enterprises owned by foreign capital. So the results seem to be optimistic, but let's remember that they only refer to the respondents' perceiving of using GHRM practices in enterprises. On the other hand, only 33% of respondents were able to provide a specific example of GHRM practice implemented in the company. In the area of human resources planning, it was, for example, setting work objectives resulting from the environmental policy or environmental management system standard. In the area of human resources development, they indicated, for example, trainings on environmental behaviors, workplace instructions for waste segregation, or using stickers to encourage water and electricity savings. In the area of motivating, they provide such examples as rewards for green ideas for employees, co-financing of the bicycle purchase, or environmental integration events. Example of GHRM practices in the area of performance management was increasing productivity and reducing costs by switching to electronic document workflow in the company. However, none of the respondents gave an example of GHRM practice in the area of staff recruitment. In the next part of our research, we considered sustainable development activities as the environment for GHRM practices implementation. As we can see on this figure, we can identify the significant relationship between sustainable development and GHRM practices implementation. It is also confirmed in the regression analysis. Model number 1 is a control model, and we can see that the scope of GHRM practices implementation is dependent to environmental management system implementation only, while R² is relatively low. In model number 2, sustainable development activities are included, and then we can see they are positive and significant predictor for GHRM practices implementation in surveyed enterprises, while R² with much higher value. We also investigated the impact of GHRM practices implementation on the environmental performance of surveyed enterprises. As we can see in this figure, there is a clear linear relationship between the use of GHRM practices and environmental performance in total. However, this relationship is quite weak. In linear regression, we analyzed the following levels of environmental performance. In model number 1, environmental performance at individual level. In model number 2, environmental performance at team level. In model number 3, at company or organizational level. And in model number 4, at network level. The results clearly show that the implementation of GHRM practices positively and significantly impact on the environmental performance at each of analyzed levels. However, the relatively strongest impact is in the case of environmental performance at the company level, and relatively lowest impact or relationship in the case of environmental performance at the individual level. We also asked the respondents if they perceive specific evidences of improved environmental performance in the company through the application of GHRM practices, and 35% of respondents provided such examples. We can divide these effects into an improvement of individual and team environmental performance, for example, waste segregation and reducing the use of raw materials at the workplace, and improvements of environmental performance of the whole company, for example, use of drinking water instead of bottled one, or waste recycling. there was no examples of or evidences of improvement in environmental practices at the network level. So let's go to the summary. On the basis of our research, we can say that there is a moderate scope of GHRM practices perception in the surveyed companies. However, with big problems in identifying specific GHRM practices in business practice. We found specific sequential approach to implementation of GHRM practices in business practice in transition economy, including 3 stages. First, planning stage, which started about 1 year ago and is implemented in about 50% of the surveyed companies. This stage is aimed mainly on integrating ecological aspects into strategic and operational documents of the company. The next stage is building staff awareness, which is implemented in about 35% of companies for just over half a year. It covers specific actions aimed at raising the role of pro-ecological activities among employees. And the third stage, stimulating employees' green activity, implemented in about 20% of companies only, on average for 4 months. It includes the use of various instruments for motivating employees in order to encourage their pro-environmental activity. We also find significant and positive impact of GHRM practices on the environmental performance of the surveyed companies. In the final part of the presentation, what about the future of GHRM practices? We asked our respondents about it, and results seem to be very optimistic. Over 65% of respondents indicated that, in their opinion, green human resources management practices are currently too little implemented, and 54% of the respondents expect that their scope will significantly increase within the next 5 years. What is also very important, nearly 50% of the respondents are positive and often very enthusiastic about GHRM practices in the company. So we can say that these results are very good perspectives on the implementation of green human resources management practices in business practice. Finally, a brief review of the literature on green human resources management. You can already find many very interesting scientific publications on this subject. So thank you very much for your attention, and we wait for your questions and comments on our research and our presentation. Thank you very much.